Hi, the video you're about to see is part of the pipe and verse segment of Perkins Pipes. It's just that it was recorded before I started this segment. So for this video, it doesn't have the usual introduction, but this is part of pipe and verse. Welcome back to Perkins Pipes. Got the warrior hat on here today, got my one-sided war t-shirt on. This is from an album by the lead singer of the band Striper, Michael Sweet, and I've got the Centurion pipe out today. Must be talking about war things in a way. Going to talk about war things via poetry. In here today we've got some of this cube cut burley that Skylar Grimes sent me, a blending tobacco, but I'm going to try it just straight up as it is, see how that goes, and then we'll blend sometime. So let's get this guy lit. Let's get to talking. Okay, just straight burley, cube cut. Initial flavor seems good. Definitely looking forward to blending some of these. Of course, when that happens, you'll be the first to know. So, as I go along, just, living life, topics will come to mind, things that are of interest. And I think, oh, hey, that'd make a great episode for Perkins Pipes channel. And so I've had this one on the list for a long time. And I don't know, I just been, just thought of it here recently to go ahead and do it. And we talked about poetry here recently, not too long back, about Beowulf. Talked about that great epic poem. Written in Old English. Today I want to talk about another one. Now this is not Old English, although it is older English, okay? This is a poem that was written in 1842. All right, so I'm getting toward 200 years on this poem. It's called Horatius, and it's in a collection of poems by a guy named Thomas Babington Macaulay. I'm going to show you something here in just a moment. Some of you may know this poem. It used to be a generation. Students would memorize parts of this poem, recite it in school. More recently, there was the film The Darkest Hour, with Gary Oldman playing the part of Sir Winston Churchill. And there's a part where Winston Churchill is on the Underground. And he quotes from this poem, and another fellow on the Underground picks it up and starts reciting it to him and then along with him. So this is a very, very famous poem. Now, it was, as I say, written by Thomas Babington Macaulay in 1842, published in 1842, in a group of poems called Lays of Ancient Rome. Lay, L-A-Y, it's an older term for a poem. A lay is a poem. Now, I suspect I first came across this poem when I was in high school. That's starting to blur a bit for me. But the neat version of this I want to share with you is from a school book that belonged to my grandfather. So this little book right here, well, I'm going to show you, first of all, where it came from. So what you just saw there is one of the bookcases in our home. It's an old bookcase. In fact, it belonged to my grandmother. She bought it for next to nothing, I think like $3 back in the day. When she passed, my mom got it and needed some restoration work, so she and my dad had some restoration work done on it. And then it's been in my wife's and my house for many, many years now. And we keep all of our old Latin books and Latin-related books, and there's a few others there, but mostly Latin-related books. And it's there that I keep the Macmillan Pocket Classic of Macaulay's Lays of Ancient Rome. Now, I've got to be very, very careful with this, because the binding, as you'll see, is quite bad. Okay, the binding is, let's get there. The binding is quite loose, so I have to be very, very careful with this. But my grandfather, James Hanley Carlyle, was born in 1906. This book was published in 1920. So I'm thinking maybe freshman in high school for him, which would be about right for reading this poem. And what's neat is we have what looks like his teacher's writing, or maybe a parent's writing, wrote his name, James Hanley Carlyle, and here's Little York High School. This was a place in southern Indiana called Little York. Now, apparently my granddad liked to doodle in his books. I don't know who Carney is here. I don't know if that's a friend or a teacher. And then a scarecrow dummy. So, there that is. And Macaulay has several poems in this collection, but the Horatius is the most famous. And I'm not going to read all of it to you, but that's what we're going to do today. I'm just going to read part of this wonderful poem. And it's got solid rhythm and rhyme. It's very, very strong forward motion in the rhythm there of the meter. Makes for a delightful poem to read aloud. Makes for a wonderful poem to memorize and recite, which is why I think so many students used to do that. My students, my second-year Latin students, read selections from this. It is rather long. I don't have them memorize any of it, but we do still read selections from this poem. Lars Porsena of Clusium, by the 9 gods he swore that the great house of Tarquin should suffer wrong no more. By the 9 gods he swore it, and named a trysting day, and bade his messengers ride forth east and west and south and north to summon his array. So Lars Porsena was a neighboring king of Rome, and this has all taken place about 509 BC. And a fellow named Tarquinius Superbus, or Tarquinius the Arrogant, Tarquinius the Proud, was the 7th and final king of Rome. He'd been run out of Rome because of some abuses that his son had committed against the Roman people, and especially one noble Roman woman named Lucretia. He goes next door to the neighboring kingdom, the kingdom of Clusium, and goes to the king Lars Porsena and says, hey, how about helping me get my throne back over there in Rome? Because if my people can throw me out, your people might get the same idea. Lars Porsena says, good point. I'll give you some soldiers, help you retake your throne. So that's how the poem starts. It's with this king Lars Porsena helping the exiled Roman king try to reclaim his throne. Well, like I said, I'm going to skip around a little bit here. And the first few stanzas kind of set up some setting on this. But by the yellow Tiber, the Tiber River that flows through Rome, but by the yellow Tiber was tumult and affright. From all the spacious champaign to Rome men took their flight. A mile around the city the throng stopped up the ways. A fearful sight it was to see through 2 long nights and days. So everybody starts running into the city. Oh my goodness, the enemy is coming here, right? I wis in all the Senate there was no heart so bold, but sore it ached and fast it beat when that ill news was told. Forthwith uprose the consul, uprose the fathers all. In haste they girded up their gowns and hied them to the wall. And all the senators and the consuls and the leaders of Rome are going to go say, oh my goodness, what's going on here? We need to get a visual on the invading army. They held a council standing before the river gate. Short time was there, ye well may guess, for musing or debate. Out spake the consul roundly, the bridge must straight go down, for since Janiculum is lost, naught else can save the town. So the Pons Sublicius was this wooden bridge across the Tiber River. And it led across to the Janiculum Hill, which is not one of the original 7 hills of Rome, but it is part of Rome now. And you see that the enemy has now taken possession of the Janiculum Hill. And they're like, oh my goodness, if they get across the bridge, they get into Rome, we're done. All right, we got to cut this bridge down. Just then a scout came flying, all wild with haste and fear. To arms, Sir Consul, Lars Porsena is here. On a low hills to westward, the consul fixed his eye, and saw the swarthy storm of dust rise fast along the sky. Oh my goodness, they see the dust, right? The soldiers are kicking up dust. It's coming, it's coming. But the consul, and the consul is the leader during the Roman Republic, the 500 years when Rome was a republic. But the consul's brow was sad, and the consul's speech was low, and darkly looked he at the wall, and darkly at the foe. Their van will be upon us before the bridge goes down. And if they once may win the bridge, what hope to save the town? And here comes the most famous stanza in the poem. Then out spake brave Horatius, the captain of the gate, to every man upon this earth death cometh soon or late. And how can man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods? Hew down the bridge, Sir Consul, with all the speed ye may. I, with 2 more to help me, will hold the foe in play. In yon straight path 1,000 may well be stopped by 3. Now who will stand on either hand and keep the bridge with me? And we'll pause there for a moment. That's justifiably famous, because here's this thing. We got to cut down the bridge, and who's going to do it? This guy named Horatius Cocles, which literally means one-eyed Horatius. He stands up and he says, I'll do it. So first of all, this is a poem about courage. This is a poem about standing up for what is right and what you need to do. So he goes up and he says, I will do this, okay? He says, I will hold the end of the bridge, because if the enemy army, think about this, if my pipe is the bridge here, okay, and so the enemy army is going to be coming across, and we're going to try to chop it down back here, okay? He says, we got to have some people down here to hold off the army while the rest of you chop down this bridge. And he says, I can do it. Give me 2 more guys. Just 2 guys to hold the bridge, because it's a natural bottleneck. It doesn't matter how many thousands are in the invading army. When they get to that bridge, right, it's like sands through an hourglass. So are the days of our lives. They can hold with just a few guys. He says, and I just need 2 guys to do it with me. Well, sure enough, 2 guys did it. A guy named Spurius Lartius and a guy named Titus Herminius. Both say, we will stand with you. Excuse me, got a little tobacco there. Then out spake Spurius Lartius, a Ramnian proud was he. Lo, I will stand at thy right hand and keep the bridge with thee. And out spake brave Herminius, of Titian blood was he. I will abide on thy left side and keep the bridge with thee. And I talk about this with my students, the need for people to stand up like Horatius did. When there's a crisis, right, as we talk about stepping up to the plate. But also, you may not be that person, right? It just may not fall to you, but you may be like Herminius. You may be like Lartius. When the need comes and somebody else is standing up and says, I need a couple people with me, who's going to be those people, right? Who's going to step up? And they say, hey, we'll do it. So these 3 guys go for it. Now, the rest of the moment, I wish we had time for it. The rest of the poem is just wonderful action adventure. Uh, Let me give you a taste here. It's just lots of really good action poetry. So a guy comes forward named Aunus, capital Aunus. He comes up to the bridge, sees these three guys standing there. It's like, three guys, I can take these guys. But the Romans triumphed. Stout Lartius hurled down Aunus into the stream beneath. Herminius struck at Seius, another enemy, and clove him to the teeth. At Picus brave Horatius darted one fiery thrust, and the proud Umbrians' gilded arms clashed in the bloody dust. If you've ever read Homer's Iliad or you've read Virgil's Aeneid, you know this is the kind of language of war poetry from the ancient world, and Babington Macaulay has picked that up. And then comes this big guy named Astur, capital Astur. And this guy's a big dude. Takes him 2 hands to lift his sword. Then whirling up his broadsword with both hands to the height, he rushed against Horatius and smote with all his might. With shield and blade Horatius right deftly turned the blow. The blow, though turned, came yet too nigh. It missed his helm, but gashed his thigh. The Tuscans raised a joyful cry to see the red blood flow. So here comes this guy, and he brings his sword down with 2 hands. Horatius turns, the blade misses his head, comes down, cuts his leg. Well, now Horatius is just mad, right? He's just infuriated. He reeled, and on Herminius he leaned one breathing space. Then, like a wildcat mad with wounds, sprang right at Astur's face. Through teeth and skull and helmet, so fierce a thrust he sped, the good sword stood a handbreadth out behind the Tuscan's head. So literally, Horatius just takes his sword and just, right, and just, grabs it right to his face. Well, as it's going on, the Romans are getting the bridge chopped down. And before it falls, they need to get the 3 heroes back. But meanwhile, axe and lever have manfully been plied, and now the bridge hangs tottering above the boiling tide. Come back, Horatius, loud cried the fathers all. Back Lartius, back Herminius, back ere the ruin fall. So before the bridge crashes into the river, these guys have got to get back. Back darted Spurious Lartius, Herminius darted back, and as they passed beneath their feet, they felt the timbers crack. But when they turned their faces and on the farther shore saw brave Horatius stand alone, they would have crossed once more. So the 2 guys get back across the river. Horatius doesn't make it back. And you're thinking, oh no, tragedy for the hero, right? Well, the enemy thinks that too. They're like, hey, 1 guy now, we got you. And what Horatius does, he just turns around, shows absolute disrespect to the enemy. He doesn't even speak to them, just turns his back on them, jumps into the river. Now he's all armored up. We already know that he's wounded. And in that condition, he manages to swim back across the Tiber River. And but fiercely ran the current, swollen high by months of rain, and fast his blood was flowing, and he was sore in pain. And heavy with his armor and spent with changing blows, and oft they thought him sinking, but still again he rose. And now he feels the bottom, now on dry earth he stands, now round him throng the fathers, that's the senators, to press his gory hands. And now with shouts and clapping and noise of weeping loud, he enters through the river gate, borne by the joyous crowd. And they're going to award him. They gave him of the cornland, farmland, that was of public right, as much as 2 strong oxen could plow from morn till night. And they made a molten image, and set it up on high, and there it stands unto this day to witness if I lie. It stands in the comitium, plain for all folk to see, Horatius in his harness, halting upon 1 knee. And underneath is written, in letters all of gold, how valiantly he kept the bridge in the brave days of old. So, that is just such a stirring poem. It's full of that martial glory and all that kind of stuff. And it is the kind of thing that really has a good lesson, really for all of us, not just students. So for this, just like a little feedback, what do you think of that poem? Were you familiar with Macaulay's Lays of Ancient Rome, that collection, or were you familiar with that poem, Horatius? Love to know your thoughts about that and just kind of what you think about that poem in general. As Malcolm Guite likes to say, I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. Or as I like to say in Latin, parva ago ut tandem nihil agam. Have a wonderful day.